imagine.
And we are live.
Yeah, me too. Welcome everyone to the City of Salem Bond Oversight Committee for March 26, 2026. I'm gonna speak really fast because I want to get out of here by 1 o'clock.
There you go.
I'm Julie Hoy, I'm the mayor.
Bob Courtwright, community member.
Linda Nishioka, Ward 2.
And we're still waiting for Mickey Barney. So we're gonna go ahead though with all the good news. I need a motion for approval of the February 26, 2026 meeting minutes.
So moved.
I second.
Thank you. You got that? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Anyone signed up for public comment?
No, ma'am.
No? Anything anybody wants to say? Not me. How about we revisit the bond savings and premium use policy? Mr. Eggleston?
Yes, thank you. So we took your feedback from the last meeting. We took that version of the policy and we kind of consolidated and simplified and tried to make things a little more clear. Also took the feedback about making sure it was an aggregate, not an individual ask. So you couldn't say, okay, 5% this time and 5% the next time and 5% the next time, which was never the intent. But we made sure to make sure that was clear. We also added a category for how much staff could approve, how much could be approved for this, the bond oversight committee, and then the level where the city would after this the council. So I think it lined out pretty well. And we did hear back from Mike Heron. He's not here today, but he had an opportunity to review and appreciated the changes and no other input, since he was one who had spoken to it last time.
That was gonna be my question.
It doesn't work.
So I hope you had a chance to review, but I'm happy to walk through those pieces if that would be helpful also.
So let me apologize for missing the last meeting. I think this is on the right track. I was just curious, and maybe this is something you've addressed in the reports that you provided to us, that you have the compliance and reporting. And I was wondering what the level of detail is that you provide. I mean, again, I would assume that would show the original project costs, whatever additional amounts are awarded, what the status of the two of unused funds and the bond premium and interest, just so that we are kind of keeping track of that.
Yeah, so in the past, these have been one-off requests. So what they've done is the request has come here with all the context and it's gone to city council. I think what this would do, of course, anything that needs this committee's approval would come for that. If it had staff approval, we would let you know and talk about, hey, this was the balance. You know, we're drawing down a little bit. Here's the new balance, and walking through that, you know, for the individual project as well as the category. I think so. Yeah, we would make sure we cover all those pieces.
So have we had a programmatic report before? I mean, kind of where we are and on all the projects.
So yeah, each time we've done a cash flow update, that's what we provided. So this would be, I would say, an additional level of reporting that we haven't had before, because we really haven't accessed the bond premium except on, I think, three cases out. So this could increase the frequency, or it might not. A lot depends on the economy too, if things move around.
Okay, thank you.
But I will say, you know, we're always open to feedback. So if we bring you a report and you're thinking there'd be something nice to have there, you know, we can just add it.
Great.
Great questions. Anyone else? Great job. Thank you for incorporating all of Mike's thoughts.
Yeah.
You good thoughts?
Yes. So if nothing else on that, we'll move on to the Affordable Housing Opportunity Funds criteria policy.
I guess just real quick, if you're okay with it, we'd entertain a motion to move it, recommend it to city council. If not, we can bring it back a different time.
I'm okay with it.
Yes, I so move.
Second.
We have a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. Sorry to rush. Yeah, onward. Item B. Mr. Brown.
Kelly, for the viewing public.
Yes. I will share the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Is there any viewing public?
Let me see. Eunice, can you see the screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, committee members. My name is Michael Brown. I work for Kristen Rutherford at Community Planning and Development. My official title is Manager of Housing Production Programs and Incentives. And what the staff is bringing to you today is the first blush at some scoring criteria for the use of the affordable housing tranche of the bond funds. As everyone knows, there's $10 million, of which about 40% of it's now been committed. And so the staff was contemplating, if the public were to ask, how are you deciding these things? It might be a good idea to give the committee something that they could point to and say, these are the criteria. This is not a requirement. However, it's kind of the city's standard good practice for developing criteria to evaluate these types of things. So what happened was, as an outgrowth from when this first passed, Kristen had developed some scoring criteria that back in, I think, July of 2024, and it had never gone anywhere. So Eunice and I picked it back up again and tried to advance the ball, if you will. You don't have to make any motions on this one today. In fact, the purpose here is just for you to look this over, ask any questions you have, contemplate it, and then perhaps at your next meeting we can address any issues and then take action. So when we looked at how to address this, we wanted to link the use of the funds to the housing production strategy, which seemed to be a solid foundation. So we put the four housing production strategies that we're addressing up there. And then my colleague Eunice Kim thought that adding the regional scenario plan performance with respect to the core network area in the transit plan was a good idea, and as usual, she's right. So those are the things we're looking to address. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we developed these kind of 6 functional areas, if you will. Obviously, affordability being the primary one. But then we also wanted to get as much bang for the buck as possible. So there was the idea of development production. In other words, producing things. We wanted to look at decentralization of projects because I'm sure that the folks on the committee are more clued into this than I, but even though I sit in office every day, I picked up some in my infrequent meetings with neighborhood associations that there are certain neighborhoods that feel like they're being concentrated. Affordable housing developments are being concentrated. The 4th criteria, construction readiness, is simply a matter of how far along someone is. And then the 5th one, which is unit priorities, specifically addressing things that were found during the extensive community outreach in the development of the housing production strategy. And that was the fact that I'm leading the way. Salem residents are getting older, and there's also a demand for a need for larger units or more bedroom units. And then finally, kind of a link to location-based amenities. One being the proximity to the Chariot's core network. And then we thought about, we went back and forth with this, finally came up with a menu that somebody could try to do. If they did 2 of the 5 that we have there, then they would get credit for that as well. So then, after doing all of that and establishing some potential scores for it, Kelly, next slide, please.
I'm sorry.
We decided to do a test score, if you will, for the two developments that have already been awarded funds. And the top one there is what became to be known as Casa Loma. That's Neighborly Ventures ones down on Joseph Street. $3 million for off-site infrastructure, which I from what I've read, it represents about 50% of their total offsite infrastructure costs. And then the one on the bottom there is Gussie Bell. I think everyone there is pretty familiar with that one. That was a Salem Housing Authority partnered development. So we applied this criteria to those two projects, and the one on the top, Casa Loma, came to 65 out of, well, trying to hit a target of 70, and Gussie Bell came to 80, once again, trying to hit a target of 70. So I will entertain any questions that anyone wants to, you've been provided the details in the company memo of how these are scored. And again, no decisions need to be made today. None of this is chiseled in stone. It's all written in pixels. So anything that the committee thinks would be better than this, that's fine.
I just have a question. The other night at the council meeting, it was either Nicole or Jessica that mentioned less of a need for multiple bedroom units. Did I hear that?
When she was presenting about the new one, no, I think that she may have said that they need multiple bedrooms. That
I have to go back. I thought I heard it surprised me, so maybe I heard it wrong. And maybe not as much of a need for multi-bedroom units.
and it looks like Josh is gonna try to find out. So I think that again, when the target is more families, then of course you're going to need more bedrooms, but I think we better find out because I don't remember.
Okay.
I do have a question though that's in relationship to Julie's question. On this sheet, you make the point that at least 3 times the number of type A units required by building codes. Can you elaborate on that a bit, or Eunice maybe?
Not very well. Eunice could, right, Eunice?
So Eunice, this was on number 5, unit priorities. And it says at least 3 times the number of type A units, which I didn't know what type A units were. And at least 20% of those units have 3 or more bedrooms.
Those two are separate. The type A units, my understanding, I think over 20 units, you need to have it's either 1 or 2% affordable, or type A units, which are more like accessible units. The type B units are more like adaptable. So type A units, would have, turnarounds and wider doors, doorways, ground floor entry, etc. We see more of those with our larger projects. And then the second bullet point of 20% of units, 3 or more bedrooms, would be an additional way to get more points for our need around multi-generational housing. I will say on these unit priorities and the other potential criteria, we did speak with Jessica Blakely to kind of ground truth some of these. We pulled a lot of these from the housing production strategy, but we wanted to make sure, talking to Jessica, who obviously builds affordable housing, that, would she have 3 more units? Would she be able to do type A units? And she kind of agreed with these thresholds as being doable and desirable.
Okay, thank you. One additional question. I'm seeing mostly, it does talk about up and affordability, single family, and then it talks about multifamily being rental, single family ownership. Are we also considering, and I'll use the term that I think can help define it better, cottage clusters, such as what United Way is doing, in the sense of maybe building several individual units, and I'm seeing this is more for seniors that need affordable housing, but that they can be sort of in a collective gathering. So I'm wondering if that's at all in part of this.
Yes, cottage clusters would be part of this and would score based on either the affordability or if they're home ownership, if it was like a land trust under the affordable home ownership units.
Okay. Thank you.
the bond measure itself didn't specify that it had to be multifamily or single
Single
family or homeownership. So we tried to create something that
Within it.
we could meet both needs or both application types.
Okay. I think having this criteria guidelines are really helpful. So thank you.
As an urban planner, let me start by apologizing and say this, I really get into the weeds on this stuff. So let me offer some thoughts. One, I'd start with the first three rules of real estate: location, location, location. So when we talk about location-based amenities, I'd like to hear some more about that or have some thought about that, and a couple of thoughts for you. One is, I think the distances are pretty generous. If you look at a map of Salem and where you get when you're half a mile from the core network or half a mile from a shopping center, or a quarter mile of the shopping center. But I think a quarter mile is a better sense of what is walkable. And maybe you would just grade the points by the distance. Again, if your mode of transportation is walking, and the distance is half a mile, that means the round trip is a mile. That's possible, but challenging in terms of.
It's interesting that you highlight that because that was an arm wrestling match that Miss Kim and I.
I think I've had the same.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because I personally live on foot and on bus. So I live over in West Salem, and I chose where I lived so that I could do exactly that. As the crow flies, it's about 200 meters to my bus stop, but as I have to walk it, it's 400. So that kind of thing, the discussion Eunice and I were having was, can we make it as the crow flies or as public ways? I said we need to make it public ways because that's a real distance that you have to walk.
I meant to applaud that. I think that's the right way to have the criteria.
I think no offense to those who live in vehicles most of the time, but it's very easy to forget exactly how far something is and how long it takes when you are driving constantly and you're like, oh, it's only a half a mile. Well, that's true. But when you're walking the half mile and you're carrying, I do my bag of groceries or my cart of groceries behind me, yeah, it makes a difference.
Okay, so the kind of related comment there is this is an essential part of affordability. If you have to own a car or can't walk by transit, then that certainly affects maybe not your housing affordability directly, but your family budget. So I think that's really important. One of the things that I'd encourage you to look at in terms of a location would be either walk score or there's a housing transportation affordability score. And it's data that's available for cities all over the place, but might be a good kind of shorthand way to look at how accessible different locations are.
And that's by the state, from the state.
Well, actually, it's called the Center for Neighborhood Technology out of Chicago, but it's just data that is available nationally. And I think there's a similar version of that that's been done by the Environmental Protection Agency. So there are a couple of different indexes that can be used to measure basically a number of things that are within walking distance, or tell you how good an apartment is. If you search for an apartment for a house, you'll find these indexes pop up to tell you how walkable your neighborhood is. So that was one. The other one, you talked about bang for the buck on the development production criteria. And I'm wondering if there's any looking at the return on the dollars that we're putting in. Looks to me, if I'm correct, this is the total number of units that are being produced as opposed to how much is the city providing per unit of yield. Is that something you thought about? Or
we did. And this criteria that you're seeing, it makes sense for the multifamily, right? This criteria that you're seeing is kind of a outgrowth of what Kristen first proposed when the bond first passed. We debated whether we should go per door or this, and just simply said, because the committee is going to be making decisions prior to knowing the full extent of the other funding sources in some cases, it was just easier to go with the mass rather than per door.
But is that something you're interested in, city funding for affordable housing unit?
Yeah, I mean, if we're comparing 2 or 3 different proposals, that's the sort of thing that I think would be significant as well. How many units are we want as many as we can get.
Right.
I remember that discussion back in 24 when we first talked about it, because there was, a couple different proposals. We went with the neighborly ventures one, but we didn't go with a different proposal because it was not as many units for the amount we were having to put into.
The other one that I was curious about is the distance from other affordable housing units. And I understand the neighborhood kind of concern of you're dumping all the affordable housing in our neighborhood. But at the same time, and I guess this is a question of, have we identified kind of priority areas for affordable housing? So as opposed to saying there's already affordable housing there, have we sat back and looked at areas that we would like to get more affordable housing in?
I think Eunice did that as part of in fact, I know Eunice did it as part of the housing production strategy. Eunice?
Sure, this comes out of both the idea of not wanting to concentrate poverty and the idea that the community wants to see more affordable housing opportunities in areas that are outside North and Northeast, where a lot of our affordable housing is currently concentrated. And that's why there's both the decentralization as well as the location criteria. So it kind of gets to both of the ideas. We want it near transit, near amenities, but also not concentrated in one area. It's also something that we heard a lot during the Our Salem project about trying to decentralize where all of our affordable housing is in North and Northeast.
But let me repeat my question is, given what we know about where
We know where the affordable housing developments
it's
are
currently
now.
concentrated,
Yes.
have we said this area is full or has its fair share? Are there other areas that we think should be targets based on whatever factors we're looking at?
I mean, if I may, I think the criteria is we're looking at areas, that are, they're going to afford higher when they have less than 15% poverty, right? So I think it doesn't necessarily get to that point exactly, but I think it approximates it.
Well, maybe that's just something we're thinking about is if you can translate these criteria into how do they fit on the ground?
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, we have looked at a map, obviously, of where different poverty rates are, but we have not pinpointed certain areas and said this area is where the affordable housing is. We're trying to get to our priorities as a community without locking in and say you must be on these specific parcels.
Then it's also about land, what's available.
Correct.
Well, that's another question I had, and maybe I can't remember how we got the first 2 projects, but what is the process for how we're going to get projects coming in asking for that additional $6 million?
The Gussie Bell project was kind of an oddity because the city acted as a high-risk bridge loan for that one until the eventual developer and the previous owner could work out the details of the sale. And then as an outgrowth of that, the city acquired some of the land for stormwater, I think, right?
I'm not sure. It was for conservation.
Or conservation, right. And then there's been another $400,000 that was added for street improvements for accessibility that was associated with that project. The Casa Loma one, I don't know the details of how that one. Yeah.
I mean, one thing we're trying to do is after we have this criteria developed is we would stand up a web page essentially where people could contact us, they'd be able to see the criteria. Because right now it's developers who know what's available.
Yeah.
So we want to open it up to, hey, looking for this, you can find it on our website, you can get in contact with Mike or someone else and we can talk to you. It's not so flexible funding that just, hey, we're accepting applications and they close in 2 months. Like that's probably not going to work for this kind of program.
There's not enough money anyway.
There's not enough money, and it's just so specific how we have to work on the, have to remain in public ownership, site improvements, things like that. But trying to keep get it open to a broader audience.
Let's do
Eunice has her hand up.
Thanks. I just wanted to add, we are in the process of creating a housing developer resource webpage that would include all of our resources, our financial, SDC waivers, URAs, our regulatory changes that we made, and this would be part of that. We could link to it. We're trying to create a one-stop shop for all housing development and including maps that you could use to help kind of see where land is available, where there's infrastructure, et cetera.
Thanks, Eunice. I did hear from Jessica. So the wait lists have significantly declined on the 4 bedrooms units and are non-existent on the 5 bedrooms. So they're really focusing on 1, 2, and 3 bedroom
Okay,
type
thank you.
facilities.
And
I think that kind of gets to the average family size.
yeah, how close people are willing to live together.
May I ask, Eunice, I'd like to ask a question of you. So the page that you're describing to help people understand what options they might have with building affordable housing, can you just elaborate a little bit on what benefits they might get by not having system development charges and how much impact that is?
The benefits of not receiving SDC
Yeah.
or of
No,
receiving a waiver?
I think you had said that you receive that they could receive a waiver. I'm just trying to understand, is it total reduction? Is it a portion? How much are we looking at? Or is it based on the project size and how's that decided?
Sure. So the webpage is just going to point at existing resources. So our current SDC waiver for affordable housing, it would point to that. Our SDC waiver for ADUs. So that criteria we're not proposing to change. My understanding there is going to be a new look at the SDC methodology later this year or next year, and that's when that would all be re-examined. The webpage is really just current resources. So if anything gets updated, we would update it there.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to figure out if there were some changes that I couldn't remember.
Sure.
I had a couple of questions and I apologize for coming in late. I appreciate all the questions because a lot of them touched on things I was curious about. I just heard something come up about the number of units, the unit priorities, where it said at least 20% of the units have 3 or more bedrooms. So it sounds like you already talked about this, but that was one of my concerns as well.
I just brought it up as a question.
Okay.
I had heard there was less need for the larger units.
Well, I would agree. I was thinking of the Glen Creek apartments and the fact that we're changing and taking the same area and taking them 4 and 5 bedrooms down to 1, 2, smaller ones. And I was wondering why this was, since they're 10 points for 20% of them having 3 or more bedrooms, it seems like maybe we should be focusing on, I don't know, 2 or more. I mean, just the smaller units. So, the smaller ones, so we get more units. So that was one thing I just wanted to mention. One of my big questions was under the statement of purpose and priorities, when it says the resulting product must stay in public ownership. How does that happen? And is there a time limit or how does that work for us?
Yeah, so that's a limitation of just the general obligation bonds. So since we issued them as taxable general obligation bonds, the private activity is okay, but the improvement has to remain in public ownership for the life of the bond.
For the life of the bond.
The life of the bond, which generally taxable series are fairly short. They, with how we structured them recently, they have a fairly fast payoff. But we don't want to purposefully try to subvert the requirement, if that makes sense. We don't want to wait until that requirement goes away to do the improvement. So we're still looking for it to remain in public ownership. So really focusing on street improvements, site improvements, things like that, which are generally required and generally pretty significant costs for most projects. It could also be a land purchase for the long-term lease. There's some ways to get around it. We're also just not talking about a lot of money. either with what's left in the affordable housing market. So it's not, we're not gonna do a whole housing project with it, you know, so we're really looking to fill some gaps for specific areas.
Okay, because I was just curious as to what it said, you know, for the life, but when you said for the life of the bond, and so I didn't know if it was 10 years, 15 years.
Technically,
Forever.
those ones are actually fully paid off after this year.
Okay. All right, that just wasn't clear to me in that part of it. Okay, that was my only question.
So Josh, thank you for making that point. I do think that it's not, it's still a good idea for us to kind of clarify some of this criteria, because I can see where the criteria could be used if we voted on another bond in 2031.
Yes, we will be recommending a different structure and verbiage to make sure it gives us a little more flexibility for the next round.
Eunice has her hand up. Great.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is that we should take another look at the 3+ bedrooms. Maybe that's too high, or maybe it shouldn't be 20%, or just take another look at that, which we're happy to do. We did look at a bunch of projects, and some of them hit that, some of them don't. So I think, and then did you want us to take another look at the different amenities?
The
The
location,
location-based
The
amenities?
location-based pieces, yes.
I mean, I think Bob had mentioned looking at the lock score, which, you know, I'm familiar with. If you go on Redfin or Zillow or whatever else, you can see that. So is that more what you're looking for, is looking at some kind of?
I think some sort of refinement of the criteria. Again, I would shorten the distances that you're looking at to make sure we're really getting close to the location. And maybe the other factor would be to award more points. It looked like it was
Any two.
5 to 10 points.
Yeah.
So,
Location.
yeah. So 3 times as what was that?
Eunice, did you tell me that the core network, the Chariot's core network piece was set at a half mile in some other document?
Correct. In the scenario plan, it is set at a half mile. We could certainly look at more points. We initially started at a lot more points for location because I tend as a planner to think location is really important. But we didn't want it to outweigh the number of units. We were kind of, it was like at 30 points. And so you could have a very small project in a good area, get a lot more points. And so it would be worth, I guess, hearing from you all if location should be bumped up in point value.
I think so. Again, when we talk bang for the buck, it's how much are we investing per unit would probably be as much a factor as the number.
I've got that down, so we'll.
So maybe there's some way to balance those out. And again, my thought about the half mile versus quarter mile is maybe you get more points if you are within a quarter mile.
Got it.
And half as many if you're
Okay.
within half mile.
And then maybe on the number of units, it might be something that you would, instead of saying 20% of units 3+ bedrooms, could simply say 2 to 3 bedrooms, or something that maybe doesn't make it sound like that you're hoping to see 4 and 5 bedrooms.
Okay, sounds good.
So do you think 2 or 3 or just 2+?
2+ might be fine, because then it leaves it open-ended. It could be 3, or it could be 3 or 4 if the developer felt that their area really needed that bigger size. Sometimes I think too, multi-bedroom units can often be not necessarily a family, but maybe 2 families, or
Home office.
or yes, somehow that there may be a different kind of mix of participants in that space. Just like oftentimes a 2-bedroom is two individuals, but they're sharing the space. So there's maybe more opportunities. But so 2+ would be fine, I think.
Okay, is there any other things? And we'll take these in unison, I'll go back to arm wrestling. Chief.
I'm curious about.
Me too.
I do have a question, because I don't know. What makes a developer more money? Two bedrooms or a 4-bedroom? Two, right?
So it really depends upon other factors. And so now that we don't have parking requirements, so it was very different if you had to have 1.5 parking units for every apartment, whether that had 1 bedroom or 5 bedrooms. So some of that changes and really so much of it plays out with how what they call the capital stack, how their funding is, timing of funding, what resources they don't have to pay for, such as system development charges, maybe not have to be paid for, or other incentives that can help them. So it can be a big mix.
When you said, the developer could, understand the needs of the area and whether or not it would behoove the neighborhood to have a 4-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, would they really go that way?
I mean, it would just be a market analysis.
Yeah, it'd be a market
determine if there's a market for it, because in some cases, you might not get any additional funding for a 5th bedroom because there's just no demand for it at all. You have to price it the same.
Thank you.
So that market analysis helps them determine who will be our renters and what are their needs. And so those are the guesses that they have to, or the kind of the educated guesses that they have to make when they're figuring out what kind of units they want to develop.
Okay, thank you.
But I would think it would be more expensive to put in two 2-bedroom units than 1 4-bedroom.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some economies of scale with the bathrooms and kitchen and common spaces. Yeah, sure.
So
And then there'd be more rental income with the 2 units versus the 1 unit with all the bedrooms.
yeah, and it's also based on square footage. Simply square footage, because that's how they come up with how much it's going to cost per square foot.
Right.
But as Josh said, if you've got 2 units and you have a number of bathrooms and a 4-unit has the same number, then 4 units going to be able to generate more income.
All right, anything else on all of that? Eunice's hand is not up, so I know this.
Thank you, Eunice, for joining on your vacation. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Thank
Wow.
you, bye.
Dedication. Okay, on to item 5, and there's no new items. On item 6, the management update, bond issuance.
Yeah, so we successfully issued $100 million in bond 2 years ago. On the tax bid side, there were 13 bids. And landed during the meeting, there was some uncertainty leading up to it. We had a pricing call the day before, and then even that morning of, our underwriter had some, slight hesitation, but it worked out.
When I was in the room.
And we had 6 bids on the taxable side, so that's a smaller issue. So the combined about 4.5% as far as the interest rate. And that landed just where we thought it would be, between 4.3 and 4.6. So not as much premium as last time. We got about $3.1 million in premium. But still, it's nice that we got it done, and we don't have to worry about it for a couple of years. We did have a thought about if we should push it off or not, but we really don't know what the next several weeks will look like, so we as well. We took the stable morning and went with it.
I don't blame you.
That was 100 million, was that right?
Yes. And we'll issue a media release or something here in the next couple of days.
They were excited about the Oregon commercial. I don't know if you want to talk about that. We were the only Oregon paper out or something.
Yeah, there hadn't been much Oregon municipal bonds in the market for a little while, so there were some some appetite, some demand for organ specific. Also just flight to quality, so we're kind of similar to treasury bills a little bit. So we expected some demand there, and we certainly got plenty of bids that proved that out. And there was a pretty tight offering too. So 13 bids, they were all within 4.2 to 4, within 2 basis points or something. So really tight spread.
Okay, I'm curious person. You're sitting there watching us, these bids?
So we're staring at
Refresh your
we're
screen.
staring at a computer screen that you're refreshing, literally like 30 seconds before the actual sale. There's like 3 bids, and we're like, okay. And then as it ticks down, it's it just gets more sweet at 13. So you guys staring at a screen, and then after.
Are you all milling around, like
We're watching it,
eating snacks?
stressing, I'm getting sweaty.
Yeah, I was thinking there was some sweat going.
There's only 3.
Josh was very happy about where we that day. He was good.
So you were standing on your chair screaming.
Basically, that's Josh. Mountains on that.
Josh, we needed to invite next time. We all look like what you want.
We need video. We need video of it.
He's getting quite a reputation with the city staff and
He's so
knowledge he carries.
I'm so glad I asked.
What's your reputation? I don't know.
Well, the moment people see him, it's just like, just so that you know, we're trying to be efficient.
Yeah, that's right.
When they see me and they say like, I just bought this.
It's like a confession.
I feel like I'm in trouble.
Yeah, the rest of it.
One thing our financial advisor also shared with us is kind of, Josh mentioned that flight to quality, just with everything going on in the world right now. A lot of investors are actually looking more at local government and even state governments to invest their money in instead of federal, right? And so it's been a, I think that timing was good for us on that. I was happy. I was nervous.
So are the bids coming from within the US?
Yep. So they're from, all over the nation. So institutions from all over.
You'd recognize the names, yeah, big financial institutions. But then we actually close on April 7th. So they gave us a good faith deposit a couple days ago, and then we get the balance of the funding after they go through due diligence and work with underwriting, and then we actually close, just like you would on a house, April 7th.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, how does our bond rating tie in?
Oh, you should say. Sorry. That's a great, I'm excited. Sorry. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so we got affirmation from Moody's about the AA2 rating, which is it's a good rating. And it certainly plays a part. So when you're looking at the area, you're looking at risk, you're looking at all the different things, you're looking at the credit rating. It all comes into play for who bids. So I think all those combinations, 13 bids, I think it proves that, hey, these are bonds people really want.
Pretty safe, yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning, not trying to embarrass you, Josh, and you and your team, but all of this work over the past few months has been done with shortage of staff. Like the finance department lost several employees through the stuff, but so that's kudos to you and your team, Josh, for kind of doing all this great work minus how many ever people
Yeah,
that
thank
you don't have right
Yeah,
now.
it's definitely a team effort.
I love that. Great job.
And one thing they mentioned also on the bond rating that our rating analyst from Moody's mentioned was the positivity from the local option levy as being a new funding source for the city and kind of that extra funding for those services and easing up a little bit with the general fund and how that was a positive. So that was, shows the
confidence.
hard work, that the Canadians put in.
And voters' willingness to fund services.
Yeah.
So it's a positive.
Very much. So.
That's awesome. Way to go, everybody.
Oh, team.
Still want to see you stand.
No, I want to see.
The risk department might be nervous about
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna say, no.
Okay, home without weirds. All right then. Wow, great job. We have no continued business.